Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into a bit of a curriculum mystery: disability grants and academic boundaries. This whole topic actually stems from this highly specific, honestly fascinating query about how our educational systems are really designed. Sure, it might seem a little niche at first glance, but unpacking it reveals exactly how the academic world separates different types of money, and more importantly, why that absolutely matters. So, the question that kicked off this entire investigation is surprisingly simple. Why are disability grants missing from the business studies curriculum? Now, you might reasonably be thinking, well, money is money, right? Shouldn't a business class cover all financial transactions? It makes a lot of sense. But solving this mild academic mystery is going to help us deeply understand the fundamental differences between public welfare and private enterprise. Okay, Section 1, the business focus. Let's get right into it. To really solve this mystery, we've got to start with a strict definition. Business studies, at its core, is the academic study focused entirely on formal business entities, trade, and economic value creation. It is hyper-focused on the mechanics of the private sector. So we're not talking about a general class covering all money everywhere. Nope. It's specifically about how private companies make products, sell goods, and ultimately turn a profit. And because of that strict focus, the curriculum is drawn to commercial capital like a magnet. So rather than studying public assistance programs, the coursework emphasizes how commercial entities aggressively acquire capital. It's all about how they manage their finances to stay afloat and, grow. The whole thing is entirely dedicated to feeding the commercial engine. The sheer specificity of the commercial model is totally key here. Students in these classes are learning about securing venture capital, issuing corporate shares, managing complex cash flows, and generating revenue through active trade. Basically, business studies teaches you how a private firm budgets and handles corporate tax obligations. It's an entirely separate ecosystem from government aid, rooted purely in private commerce and private growth. Moving right along to Section 2, welfare versus commerce. Now, the crucial point is captured perfectly in this distinction. A disability grant is financial aid from the government. It is not income earned through business trade or labor. A disability grant represents public financial assistance, and because it's aid distributed by the state rather than, say, revenue generated by selling a product or a service, it just simply doesn't fit into the commercial model of income generation. It's apples and oranges, really. This brilliantly illustrates the core dichotomy we're dealing with. On one hand, we have wealth creation. This is the domain of the private sector, profit-driven entities, and income through trade, basically the bread and butter of business studies. But on the other hand, we have wealth redistribution. This encompasses the public sector, civic responsibility, and government social programs like disability grants. The state steps in to redistribute the wealth that the private sector creates. Which brings us to Section 3, where grants belong. So if these vital social welfare payments aren't in business studies, where do they actually go? Well, it's absolutely crucial to remember that being excluded from business studies does not equal being excluded from education. They aren't just ignored by the academic world. Actually, they're just filed in a completely different academic cabinet. When we look at this breakdown, we can see exactly where government policy lives. Business studies sits right up top, strictly dealing with profit and the private sector. But then you have subjects like macroeconomics, public administration, and citizenship studies, which are designed specifically to tackle the state's role. If you want to understand exactly how a disability grant is funded by taxpayers and then distributed, you take public administration. Those subjects are built from the ground up to analyze civic responsibility. And finally, let's look at Section 4, the academic boundary. You see, it is all about ensuring depth. The educational curriculum relies on these strict academic boundaries to make sure students achieve a deep, specialized understanding of both complex systems independently. Think about it. If you try to teach a student corporate cash flows while simultaneously teaching the intricacies of federal welfare distribution, you really risk watering down both subjects. By categorizing subjects this way, the education system prevents a really messy overlap between two totally distinct sectors. A business track gets an intensely focused study of commercial funding models, things like bank loans and venture capital. Meanwhile, entirely separate courses are dedicated to public assistance policy. By maintaining this wall, both the mechanics of private wealth creation and the civic duty of wealth redistribution get the rigorous, neutral attention they actually deserve.
All of this leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to ponder. We spend our formative years learning about these systems in totally different classrooms with totally different textbooks. If we're taught to keep the worlds of commercial profit and social welfare completely separate, how does that shape our expectations of what businesses and governments should actually do? Does it make us view them as completely distinct forces? And is that even accurate to how the real world operates? It's definitely something to think about the next time you see a headline about corporate taxes or government grants. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this curriculum mystery today, and I'll catch you next time.